Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something that affects pretty much every single business, the manager. But forget everything you think you know, because we're not talking about your grandpa's old-school management theory. We're going to look at how that role is completely transforming from this rigid pyramid into something way more flexible, like an AI-powered toolkit.
So let's just jump right in with a question. What could a big-shot CEO making billion-dollar moves possibly have in common with the shift supervisor at your local grocery store? Your first thought is probably absolutely nothing. But trust me, by the end of this, you're going to see that they're basically playing the same game. They're just on different fields using a slightly different set of rules.
You see, for years and years, management looked like this, a nice, neat, stable pyramid. But that whole structure, it was built for a world that was slower, way more predictable. And today, well, it's starting to crumble under the pressure of just how fast everything moves now.
I mean, think about it. The old pyramid was all about control, a slow chain of command where information trickled down. But today's world is instant. A supply chain breaks, a competitor launches something new, a TikTok goes viral. Those things don't wait for a manager to get approval from their manager. They demand a response right now. And that old pyramid, it's just become a bottleneck.
So really quick, let's just review that classic structure. You've got your top-level execs, right? The CEOs and VPs who set the big picture vision. Then you have the middle managers who are supposed to translate that vision into actual plans. And finally, you have the first-line supervisors on the ground making sure the day-to-day work actually gets done. It all looks so clean on paper, but just knowing these job titles, well, it doesn't really tell us what makes a manager good at their job.
So to really get to the heart of what makes a great manager tick in this crazy modern world, we got to go beyond those simple job descriptions. We need to pop the hood and use a much more powerful set of tools to see what's really going on.
And that brings us to the core of this whole thing. Two really brilliant frameworks from a couple of management gurus, Henry Mintzberg and Robert Katz. And don't worry, these aren't just some dusty old academic theories. Think of them more like special glasses that let us see what any manager at any level is actually doing all day and what skills they need to crush it.
Okay, first up we have Mintzberg. He looked at the old descriptions like planning and organizing and said, that's way too vague. What are they physically doing every day? And he came up with 10 very specific roles that all managers play, which he grouped into 3 main categories.
The first category is interpersonal. This is all about people. A manager has to be a figurehead, doing the symbolic stuff like handing out awards. They have to be a leader who actually motivates and coaches their team. And crucially, they're a liaison, building a network of contacts inside and outside the company to get stuff done.
Next up are the informational roles. This is where the manager basically becomes the nerve center for their team. They act as a monitor, constantly scanning for important information. Then they're a disseminator, making sure that information gets to the right people on their team. And finally, they're a spokesperson, sharing information with people outside their team or the company.
And last but not least, we have the decisional roles. This is where the action is. The manager acts as an entrepreneur, kicking off new projects. They're a disturbance handler when things go wrong, and they always do. They're a resource allocator, deciding who gets the time, money, and tools. And they're a negotiator fighting for their team's interests. The crazy part is, every manager is juggling all 10 of these all the time.
Okay, so if Mintzberg tells us what managers do, our next guy, Robert Katz, tells us what skills they need to have. He boiled it down to 3 core skills. But here's the genius part. He realized that how important each skill is, well, it changes dramatically depending on whether you're at the top of the pyramid or on the front line.
So let's go back to that frontline supervisor. According to Katz, their world is dominated by technical skills, a huge 60%. They need to know the nuts and bolts of the job, whether it's how to code, run a machine, or do the accounting. Human skills, working with people, are still super important. But those big picture, conceptual skills, not as critical for their day-to-day survival. Now watch what happens when we jump up to this CEO. The whole chart just flips on its head. For a top-level manager, it is all about the conceptual skills, seeing the whole chessboard, understanding how all the pieces fit together, and plotting a course for the future. And notice that middle slice, the human skills, that stays at 30%. It's the one thing that's equally critical at every single level.
All right, theory time is over. We've got our toolkit. Mintzberg's roles, Katz's skills. Let's put it to work. We'll use a real-world example everyone can understand. The brutal, competitive world of grocery stores, pitting Canada's Loblaw against the American giant Kroger.
This is where it all clicks together. Look at the top level. Because of Canada's regulatory environment, Loblaw's CEO has to focus on being a liaison and spokesperson. Meanwhile, Kroger's CEO in the wide-open U.S. market is playing the entrepreneur,
pushing hard on new tech. And that single difference at the top trickles all the way down. Loblaw's middle managers are executing a single national strategy. Kroger's are using data to let their local stores adapt. It's the same business, but the jobs of the managers are totally different at every level.
So now that we see how this all works today, let's turn to the future, because there's a tidal wave coming that's going to change everything we just talked about. And that wave is artificial intelligence. This isn't some far-off sci-fi idea, it is happening as we speak.
So how exactly is AI going to change a manager's job? Well, it's a 1-2 punch. First, it's going to automate most of those informational roles we talked about. An AI can scan data and write a sales report way faster than any human. Second, it's going to augment the decisional roles. It'll be like a co-pilot, suggesting the best way to schedule staff or solve a supply chain problem. And this leads us to probably the single most important question about the future of management. Okay, if AI is going to handle all the information and help us make decisions, what's actually left for the human manager to do? What's our value?
And the answer, funny enough, takes us right back to CAD's skills, the things that become incredibly valuable. The new premium skills are the ones AI can't touch. First, those human skills, coaching, mentoring, leading a team with actual empathy. And second, those conceptual skills, having the wisdom to ask the AI the right questions and to see the big picture that the machine might miss.
This one quote pretty much sums up the entire shift. The manager of the future isn't going to be valuable because they're a great information processor. They'll be valuable because they are a great people developer and a great strategic thinker. The job isn't going away. It's just evolving into something far more human and, you could argue, more important than ever before.